Hey guys, let's start with our review for Chapter 14. I hope everybody is getting ready for spring break. Okay, so I'm at the government blog. Hey, check out the calendar. As usual, there's some updates on there, but we're going to first look at the Chapter 14 quiz review. Remember, this is just a review. The first thing you'll notice, Chapter 14, there's a nice photo album. You can take a look through this. This is all of the presidents that we've had, and I'm going to just cruise through these because really you can look through these individually on your own. As you can see, there have been, drum roll, 44 presidents. Okay, so we're going to first talk about growth of presidential power here. In the Constitution of the United States, it says the executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States. It's Article 2, Section 1. It's the opening line of the Constitution section on the President. As you can see, it's Article 2, so essentially it's saying that that the President is the second most important, the executive is the second most important branch. Presidential powers: he commands the armed forces, he makes treaties, he approves or vetoes acts of Congress, calls special sessions, and receives diplomatic representatives. Let me get a good look at this. So, you know, you've got Obama speaking to the troops. What have I done? Oh, here we go. Here you have Nixon signing the anti-ballistic missile treaty, and here you have Secretary of State Clinton in Myanmar or Burma on an official state visit. And they take care that laws be faithfully executed. Presidential power is discussed in very broad terms in the Constitution. The Constitution lays out some really specific powers for the legislative, but not for the president. Presidents tend to interpret their power broadly, and Congress, especially members of the minority party, interpret it narrowly. There's a fight that goes on all the time where the president says, I have the power to do this, and Congress says he doesn't, and it ends up in the Supreme Court, and they make a decision on what it is. The power of the presidency, the formal power of the presidency is pretty much unchanged since 1789, but it has increased for a couple of reasons. Power is concentrated in one person. If you look at the legislature, we have 435 members of Congress, we have another 100 members of the Senate, and so you have 535 people that are spreading out all their power. Even though they have more power in unison, they don't have it when they're dispersed. Take a look at, you know, President Lincoln or Roosevelt. These are really great examples of strong presidents. You think back to your USVA history class. If you look at what those two presidents did and the strength they demonstrated. Growth of power. So as government increased in size and complexity, let's take a look at our bureaucratic. Here we go. This is the org chart for just the very top level of the U.S. government. So of course the Constitution's at the top. We've got our three branches of government, and then here from the executive we have all the bureaucracy that's going on. I mean, this is a very, very skin deep looking look at how complex the federal bureaucracy can be. Our participation in overseas wars and the importance of our military increases power in the presidency because he's the commander-in-chief. Take a look at this chart. The United States spends more than all of the other combined militaries of the world, or these top militaries in the world, going from China all the way to Turkey. We spend, you know, over $700 billion on the military. We have, looking at China, just over $100 billion. So you can see that by concentrating all that power in the military gives the commander-in-chief quite a bit of power. By the way, this is from The Economist in 2001. Examples on limits of the presidential power. So, you know, Truman couldn't take over the steel industry, and President George Bush, planned to prosecute enemy combatants in military tribunals. What happened was the Supreme Court of the United States in Hamdan versus Rumsfeld said, no. The president does not get to take away people's due process rights. And so that got kind of bumped back, and now they have a new system for it, which we will get into in our judicial unit. The president is required to execute all federal laws regardless if he agrees or disagrees with them, but the executive branch, and there's always a but, has leeway interpreting laws. Good example. There is a federal law about immigration and about undocumented immigrants in America. Well, for the first part of the Obama administration, he deported more undocumented immigrants than any other president. But in the second half, he's come out to announced Thursday that he would suspend deportation proceedings against many illegal immigrants. So again, here's an example of the president saying, wait a minute, we're going to change the way we enforce the law. Executive orders, directives, rules, or regulations are signed by the president, and they have the force of law. A good example of an executive order is from Dwight Eisenhower, who wrote Executive Order 1730 and said, we're going to remove an obstruction of justice within the state of Arkansas. He went down to Arkansas. He went to Little Rock, and he said, we're going to desegregate these schools. Now, if you read this, it's never to desegregate the schools, it's to carry out a federal court order. Okay? And it's very specific, but these are not mentioned, but they're assumed in the Constitution. Appointment power. The president names approximately 3,000 of the 2.7 million civil servants. These are the kinds of people that he is able to appoint: ambassadors, cabinet members, heads of independent agencies, federal judges, and officers, all officers in the military. Presidential appointments become more and more politicized over the past 3 decades. I want you to think about Clarence Thomas, Robert Bork. You could look at some of the confirmation hearings even more recently of Sonia Sotomayor, or even John Roberts, although he went in pretty easily. But and even Sotomayor went in pretty easily. But conservatives and liberals debate and delay block appointments. Basically, lower court judges are the ones that are becoming more and more contentious. In the past, senators had a protocol for ensuring the positions were filled while still exercising their advice and consent responsibilities. Recess appointments. This is when the Constitution allows the president to make a recess to fill up all vacancies that may have happened during the recess of the Senate. And recently you may have read that Obama appointed someone as a recess appointment, even though the Senate was not officially in recess, but he just said, well, I think they're in recess. And the question is that going to stand? And the answer to that is that maybe we'll find out through the courts. And maybe we'll find out that this is an example of expansion of presidential politics, or we might find out that it's a situation of the Congress, the legislative branch, pushing back and trying to take power back. We'll see how that works out. Removal power. This initially got the first couple of presidents in a lot of trouble, but the president has the power to remove appointees except for judges. So if you were appointed to a position in the Bush administration, you may not get appointed to that same position in the Obama administration. It actually causes a lot of turnaround when there's a new president in power. Executive privilege. We're going to kind of cruising through this. I want to get this kind of done. Presidents claim they have a right to refuse to disclose information. The idea of this is that the president must be able to talk to people privately without thinking that that those people are going to have to testify before Congress, because they have to be able to get that advice. They have to be able to get information without someone fearing that they're going to have to spill their guts about what they said to the president in Congress. Nixon was one of the first in U.S. versus Nixon, the court agreed that there was executive privilege. The problem was that it couldn't be invoked to prevent evidence from being heard in a criminal proceeding. So, Nixon had it one way, but it kind of backfired on it a little bit. Diplomatic and military powers. The president has the power to make treaties, but it must be approved by 2/3 of the Senate, and then it becomes part of the supreme law of the land. Executive agreements is a pact between the president and the head of a foreign state. These are easier ways to write essentially mini treaties. What a president says is that, okay, we're not going to have an official treaty, but my administration is going to treat this as if it's law. They're not approved by the Senate, but they can be rescinded when the president changes. Now, there's some debate about that. We can have a conversation about what would happen if you had an agreement and then you took it away with just the changing of the president. As commander-in-chief, presidents have undeclared war. We could look a little bit more into war powers. during our next session. But presidents have sent troops into combat without declaration of war, and officially Congress has only declared war 11 times. Obviously, we've been to war more than 11 times. So we have to look into what exactly does it mean that the president cannot declare war if he can send troops. The president also has legislative powers. He gets to recommend legislation. He gets to recommend a budget. He also gets to veto a law that's passed by Congress. If the president decides he doesn't like what's in a law, he says he vetoes it and it gets sent back. Now it can be overridden, but it does mean that he has the power to reject some laws. Finally, these signing statements. They direct the manner in which the new law will be enforced, and this is a pretty contentious issue because signing statements used to be very small and now they've become in greater detail, and they provide so much information that some people look at them and say, wait a minute, this is the president taking on too much power. Again, another situation where presidents take more power from the legislative, and it'll be worked out over the years. It may be worked out in the courts. It may be worked out with a constitutional amendment. It may be worked out by a president who doesn't decide to have signing statements. Who knows? But these are this kind of constant push and shove, this tug and kind of a tug of war between the three branches that goes on in our democracy. And I believe that is it. I hope this was informative. I hope this helps you prepare for the quiz. Don't forget to hit the pause button. I think I spoke very quickly this time. So sorry, guys. And if you have any suggestions for me to make these better, please tell me. Thank you.